Today's November 10, 2023. My name is Rob Carr of Kalamazoo Right to Life, and this is Pro-Life Week. Well, remember hearing talking about a Philadelphia area man named Mark Houck, who about 2 years ago was arrested and charged with violating the FACE Act because he was praying outside of an abortion clinic and knocked a clinic escort down who had been harassing his son, and he was charged with violating the FACE Act. He was acquitted. He was found not guilty of that crime. But just very recently, it was announced that Mark Houck and his wife are suing Joe Biden and the Justice Department for $4.3 million for, quote, malicious and retaliatory prosecution, unquote, that impacted his entire family. You know, with this FBI raid, about 25 agents stormed into his house at 7 o'clock in the morning, terrorizing his 7 children and his wife, and he was hauled off in handcuffs. And since then, you know, the children several of the children have been needing medication because of crying and nightmares and just having a really hard time to emotionally get past that incident. His wife has now had 3 miscarriages since that time, so that was a big stress on her part as well. So they're suing Joe Biden and the Justice Department, and we'll see how that lawsuit develops. This past Tuesday were elections in several key states around the country, and once again, the Republicans underperformed, just like they did in 2022. And we'll look at a few states here. Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin was hoping to see voters flip the state Senate from Democrat to Republican. Well, that did not happen. But when the dust all settled, what did happen was that Republicans lost the House as well. So, you know, they were hoping to gain the Senate and keep the House, and instead they lost both. So, you know, the pro-life majorities are gone in the Virginia Commonwealth. So even if the governor Youngkin was hoping to get some kind of a 15-week abortion restriction passed, some kind of a bill, I don't see that happening at all anymore because the Democrats are now in control of the legislature. So that may have to be delayed for at least a year or two. In Kentucky, you had the incumbent governor, Andy Beshear, being challenged by the current state attorney general, Daniel Callahan, who was a rising star in the Republican Party, very strong pro-lifer, very popular guy. And Kentucky voted for Donald Trump by, I think, 30%. I mean, Kentucky is a very red state. So what happened? Well, this Andy Beshear, the governor, the incumbent Democrat, pro-abortion, was reelected. And, you know, you figure that one out. And what's disturbing too is that typically when a senator has to vacate his office, whether it's by death or retirement or health, whatever, you know, the governor then will pick a replacement to finish out that person's term. So enter the issue of Mitch McConnell, you know, the Senate Minority Leader, who's about 88 years old, and he had 2 health episodes this past summer, where for about 15 or 20 seconds he kind of didn't know where he was. He couldn't speak. He was just kind of frozen. Whether it was a neurological thing or not, I don't know. But he's got problems, and if he has to resign before he's reelected, I'm not even sure if he's going to even put his name in for reelection. But if he has to vacate his office, does the governor, this Democrat, does he pick a Democratic replacement to finish out McConnell's term, or will he pick a Republican to finish out McConnell's term? So I don't know Kentucky law if it's stipulated that if a Republican has to vacate his office, the governor is obligated to appoint another Republican to fill out that term, and vice versa. If a Democrat had to vacate, that he would be replaced by a Democratic candidate to finish out that Senate term. I just don't know what the law states in Kentucky, but that is something to consider. Last item when it comes to the elections this past Tuesday was what happened in Ohio with issue 1, the state referendum that would, just like our Michigan's proposal 3, it would put into the state legislature abortion rights. And the wording was very similar. They had a lot of similarities between our referendum, and the pro-abortion side were victorious by a wide margin, like 55 to 45%. It was a really tragic defeat on our part, and I consider Ohio to be a pro-life state. They elected pro-life governor. They've got a pro-life legislature. They passed pro-life legislation. They elected J.D. Vance for the U.S. Senate last year. So recent history, Ohio has been a very reliable pro-life, pro-Republican state. So how did it happen that 55% of Ohio's voters voted to repeal all of these pro-life laws that have been on the books in their state for decades? And one of the things that is now gone, I believe it'll be gone, is the issue of parental consent. I mean, how could Ohio voters not want to keep parental consent in their law? That parents have an obligation to instruct and guide their minor children, but somehow when it comes to abortion, the parent has been pulled out of the equation, and the parents no longer have to consent to their child getting an abortion. How did that happen? Well, I think one of the ways it did happen was the money that was spent on issue 1. You remember, just like Michigan, where $50 million came in for the pro-abortion coalition, and we raised about $22 million. So we were outspent, and they had more commercials on TV and radio and social media. They just overwhelmed the Michigan voters with falsehoods and lies and misconceptions, and the Michigan voters bought it. Well, the same thing happened in Ohio. The pro-abortion forces raised $67 million on issue 1, and the pro-lifers spent about half that number. So 2-to-1 advantage. In the final weeks, the pro-abortion side spent $19 million on TV and radio commercials, and the pro-life side only spent $7.7 million, like almost a 3-to-1 advantage by the pro-abortion forces. And if you are not on top of this issue, and if you're kind of moderately pro-choice, like maybe for rape and incest, maybe in the first trimester, you think about, oh, good grief, with Dobbs we lost Roe v. Wade, we lost abortion rights. We want it back. We want abortion rights in our Constitution, to give that right back to women. Well, but included in that were things that the voter would never have approved if those were standalone issues. But in a package of, we want abortion rights protected as a package, the voters accepted that. They accepted these extreme dangerous provisions, including getting rid of parental consent. Horrible situation in Ohio. Life goes on. Elections have consequences, but this was a bad move from the voters in Ohio. Last item, which is much better news, the March for Life in Michigan this past Wednesday, about 5,000, I would say maybe 6,000 or 7,000 people crammed into the yard, the green grassy area in front of the state capitol building in Lansing to hear speeches. And then we went on almost like maybe a 3/4 of a mile walk down to the Hall of Justice. And that was great too. The weather, cold. It was cold. And when we arrived, it was a little rainy, and it kind of rained a little bit when the rally began, but it stopped and it didn't rain the rest of the day. It was cold. But it was for the most part dry when we were walking and during most of the speech making. And they were great. Barb Listing started off the program talking about the Reproductive Health Act and how bad it was and how excited she was to see all of us in the crowd. The second speaker brought in from Washington, D.C. was the national director of the March for Life, Jeannie Mancini. And she was just thrilled to be there and to see the huge crowd that we brought in. And the weather was, I was concerned that the weather was going to discourage a lot of people from attending. But we had a great turnout. We really had a great turnout. There were a lot of high school kids were there too, which surprised me. And that was great to see all the young people there. It was good. And then there were a variety of topics from different speakers. One woman was a foster parent for 35 kids, and she adopted 3 of them in her own family. She was great, talking about how important it is to adopt and to give these children, a home and to love them and just see them grow and thrive. And then there was a woman who was an OBGYN, who was a medical advisor for a pregnancy care center in Mount Pleasant. And she was great, talking about how necessary it is to have these clinics to rescue and love and assist women who feel trapped in unplanned pregnancies, and to offer them hope to carry that baby to term and to either and to raise that child or give the baby up for adoption, but to give that baby life. And standing beside her was so exciting. There were about 20 or 25 directors or administrators for pregnancy care centers all across the state of Michigan. That was great to see them stand with this doctor. And then there were about 30 or so lawmakers from the state Senate and the state House beyond the platform, and 2 of them spoke about how things are in Lansing, and how these pro-lifers tried as best they could to get the Reproductive Health Act defeated. And it was just encouraging too to hear them speak, and I think the man who actually part of his district even includes a little chunk of Kalamazoo County, like Climax and Waukesha townships. He said that one of the last things he said was, we're accused of being extreme in the pro-life movement, because somehow we're trying to deny women their freedom. But he said, no, what's extreme is supporting a partial birth abortion, or taking away clinic licensing, or trying to deny parental consent, or different things like that. That's or taking away state funding for abortions. The ban on state funding for abortions. That's extreme. Supporting partial birth abortion. That's extreme. Abortion into the final trimester. That's extreme. And then the final speaker was a young gal from Florida who, in her college years, had some real problems. She had 5 abortions, and then she came to Christ. God set her free. He forgave her, and now she has a ministry to other women to choose life for their babies. It was a great event. The walk was great. There was a huge crowd. I mean, that crowd was about a half a mile long. So I'm going to let you go. And with that, I will see you next time.